On Saturday, October 7th, Jews around the world prepared to celebrate Simchat Torah, the day that marks our annual completion of the Torah. However, in Israel, the happiest day in Judaism quickly turned into the deadliest day since the Holocaust. Before I continue, I want to say that we are so fortunate and privileged to be able to discuss and reflect on this conflict in a college course. However, our Jewish students do not share this same fortune. Many of them have family who are among those dead or kidnapped. Some of them have family fighting on the front lines right now. Some of them are reservists who have been called over there and are fighting as we speak. While the media tries to dehumanize us, I want to remind all of you that we are your fellow students. The terrorist group Hamas launched an unspeakable assault on the Israeli people, knowing they were most vulnerable on Yom Tov. Terrorists overran the southern border and began slaughtering civilians. They have murdered 1,300 people so far and are holding more than 150 hostages, including infants who are now orphaned by Hamas. According to Israeli officials, as of Thursday, 247 soldiers have been killed since the fighting began. The rest, over 1,000, are civilians and foreign nationals. At a music festival in southern Israel, Hamas terrorists gunned down at least 260 innocent civilians. They massacred hundreds at the kibbutzim that they assaulted. These kibbutzes are peaceful communities in Israel based on the concept of communal living. Just 2 months ago, FIU students were at one of these kibbutzes, which was completely wiped out. Had our students been there, they would have assuredly been murdered or held hostage. They massacred whole families in their homes. They burned people alive and mutilated their children. They paraded the naked corpses of women through the street of Gaza while people spat on their bodies and desecrated them. They left decapitated bodies all over southern Israel. There are no words to describe the evil that was unleashed on these poor souls, and there is nothing that will ever justify this barbarism. The violence was indiscriminately unleashed upon every citizen of Israel, including the deaths of at least 18 Arab citizens, foreign workers, and activists for BDS and other Palestinian advocacy groups. These murders also included many foreign nationals from over 36 countries, including 22 Americans. Many people claim this is simply the consequence of Israeli suppression of Palestinian rights, that this is what happens when tensions boil too hot. There is nothing sporadic about these attacks. Hamas has stated that this attack has been planned now for 2 years. These were coordinated attacks and a level of fighting that we have never seen from Hamas. The intelligence they had access to, methods of fighting, sophistication of weaponry, all point to influences from outside forces. Senior members of Hezbollah and Hamas have both said that Iran helped plan this attack and greenlit Saturday's assault. The IRGC has been helping Hamas plan this attack since at least August. Iran has supplied its proxies Hezbollah and the PFLP on the northern border and Islamic Jihad and Hamas in Gaza and the West Bank. Their plan is to use these proxies to suffocate Israel, but this latest attack has pushed Iran's support for terrorist groups to the forefront of discussions. Israeli officials have sworn to strike at Iran's top officials in Tehran if it is found that they are responsible for facilitating these massacres. There is a huge possibility for this conflict to expand regionally and globally. Israel has already taken out airports in Aleppo and Damascus in Syria, while Hezbollah has launched attacks and rockets from southern Lebanon into Israel, killing soldiers. Meanwhile, the U.S. has sent 2 aircraft carriers into the Mediterranean Sea to show support for Israel in the hopes of avoiding escalation. These attacks also coincide with talks between Saudi Arabia and Israel and the recognition of Israel. Now these talks will be suspended indefinitely due to this conflict, as this is the goal of Hamas to prevent the expansion of the Abraham Accords. They are sending a message to Arab nations that there will be no normalization with Israel without the establishment of a Palestinian state. Iran has a keen interest in this, to use the Palestinian cause to contend with the Saudis as the leader of the Muslim world. So there is the potential for this conflict to swing the balance of regional powers in the Middle East. This conflict has stoked the flames of anti-Semitism globally. On Sunday in Egypt, a police officer shot and killed 2 Israeli tourists and their tour guide. Today in Beijing, a man was stabbed, an employee of the Israeli embassy, brutally in broad day on a busy street. This comes as the founder of Hamas called for a global day of jihad to attack Jews everywhere today, Friday the 13th. There has been an immediate spike in attacks against Jews across the U.S. and globally. Anti-Jewish threats on Telegram, a platform popular with ISIS and white supremacists, surged by an alarming 488% in the first 18 hours on Saturday. This according to the ADL. There were reports in Salt Lake City, St. Louis, New York, all of assaults on Jews. In London, pro-Palestinians ripped down the posters of children taken as hostages. The first 4 days of the conflict saw a surge of over 300% in anti-Semitic incidents in the UK, according to Community Security Trust. Here in Miami, the police issued a statement warning of possible threats to our Jewish community. At FAU, a student was assaulted by pro-Palestinian demonstrators for having an Israeli flag. Here at FIU, the YDSA issued a statement enraged by our president's email, stating that FIU supports the U.S. and Israel in condemning the attacks by Hamas. They instead demanded FIU state their support for Palestinian resistance and boycott Israel. The slaughter, rape, and desecration of civilians is not resistance, and to suggest it is to justify or deny the atrocities that were committed. As far as what the outcome of this will be, while people march all around the world celebrating the deaths of innocent Jews, this attack will forever change the Arab-Israeli conflict. A generation of Gazans are going to be traumatized by this bloody war. Israel has a right to defend its citizens and rescue those being held hostage. Hamas is using these hostages and the civilians of Gaza as human shields. They know that Israeli hostages will force a ground invasion like in 2014 that will undoubtedly cause mass casualties on both sides. While Israel has petitioned the UN to evacuate 1.1 million people from northern Gaza, met with the U.S. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken to discuss safe zones for Palestinians, and dropped leaflets all over Gaza warning people of the coming ground invasion, Hamas has told Gazans to shelter in place where they will be caught in the middle of this war. Meanwhile, Egypt has refused to allow Gazans to cross their border, stating that they do not want a surge of refugees. Unfortunately, the result of Israel needing to remove Hamas from power will mean a refugee crisis of Palestinians. 423,000 Gazans have already been internally displaced, and that number will continue to grow. Hamas has launched a horrific, brutal attack against the Israeli people, and the result will be the destruction of the Gazan people they are supposed to protect. This will also stoke ethnic tensions with Israel and the view of the 20% of Israeli citizens that are Arab Israelis. This war will polarize and radicalize people on both sides of the conflict and set back peace 50 years. But Hamas must be removed so that they may never repeat the barbarism that they unleashed this past weekend. These are very dark days, but I have also seen the best of my community in these times. We have united and found strength in one another. In Israel, the parents of one of the young girls murdered posted online asking for 10 people to come to her funeral to perform a minyan. They had just moved here from Brazil and did not know anyone. The message was quickly picked up online, and over 10,000 Jews came to comfort these poor grieving parents. I have also seen Hebrew Israelites and Eritrean refugees in Israel, asylum seekers, organizing to supply the IDF troops on the front lines. I've seen non-kosher restaurants converting their kitchens to feed the injured, and Jews opening their homes to the victims of these attacks. These victims will never be forgotten, nor will the evil that was unleashed on the Jewish people on October 7th. They may break our hearts, but they will never break our spirits. Am Yisrael Chai.